Let's call the meeting to order. Everyone stand for the pledge of allegiance. The flag is out there. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, I'd like to thank everybody for attending the August 28, 2018 meeting of the Chamblee Downtown Development Authority. We've called the meeting to order. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes for the regular meeting from July 24th, 2018. Those minutes are in your agenda packet.
Sorry, I didn't print them out. They were emailed to you?
That was
Email.
Yes.
Has everybody had a chance to review those minutes?
Yes.
Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve the minutes as submitted.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. The minutes are approved. Next is the executive session meeting from July 24th, 2018. Has everybody had a chance to review those minutes?
Yes.
Is there a motion on those minutes?
Motion to approve the executive session meeting minutes from July 24, 2018.
And a second? All in favor for approval of the executive session meeting minutes from July 24th, 2018?
Yes.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Next is the special meeting from August 7th, 2018. Has everybody reviewed the minutes in our scintillating 11-minute video from that meeting? Do you have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve the minutes from the special call meeting on August 7, 2018 as submitted.
Do you have a second? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. That motion carries. Next on the agenda is the chairman's report. I have two items to mention. I had emailed everybody about updating my sound system. I had hoped that I'd be able to have new sound equipment here this week. I did not have a chance to get it here, so I will move that to the next meeting. And hopefully we'll have new microphones and a mixing board and a camera, so we'll have better video recording of our meetings. Next is the IGA resolution. This is the intergovernmental resolution that we approved at the August 7, 2018 meeting. At the city council meeting, Darren Fussman brought up that the city need to have a little bit more control over the use of funds from the sale of our properties, which was a very reasonable request. He and I have gone back and forth, and we have reached agreement that the mayor will be able to sign shortly. Dan McRae is going to come up with the final version of that to submit to him. So just following up on the resolution.
What is the change?
So the change is that as you know, when we sell properties owned by the DDA, the new financing doesn't tie our repayment back to any particular piece of property. It's an unsecured line of credit, essentially. That's great news for us because it allows us more flexibility in the financing of projects, purchases of land, et cetera, et cetera. However, the property is still backed by the city, or the financing is still backed by the city. So the city needs to have assurances that we're not just going to take that money and go through a big kegger somewhere. The wording of the resolution and the adjustments to the resolution that were passed, that will be passed by the city, are subtle, but it basically requires us to go and tell the city council when we're about to sell a property that we think we're going to have proceeds in excess of the funding amount, in other words, profit. We've always made a habit of telling the city council when we're about to sell something anyway, so that's not a change. There will also be call it a net proceeds committee. Consists of the mayor, the town manager, and the chairman of the DDA, whoever that is. And it will be incumbent upon the chairman of the DDA to show the city why that money should not just be automatically paid back with financing. It essentially allows us the opportunity to hold that money back if we have another project coming down the road that we can immediately turn it over and use it for. It took a while to get done, but I think we've reached an agreement on that. I'll show you all the resolution before anything goes into stone. It shouldn't require a change to the resolution that we passed on August 7th. All right. So just reporting that to you to keep you in the loop. And I know I talked fast there. Is there anybody that has a question on that? Okay. Next item on the agenda is the financial report. Brian is not here
Brian
yet.
is not here, man. We had talked about if you want to?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I wanted to weigh in, I mean, I don't know if I'm the only one that read the PDF that Catherine sent with those financial statements. The one part that we had asked for over the last couple of meetings was to add to the income and expense statement showing a column with our budget so we can compare what we've spent with what we budgeted to see if we're over budget or under budget. They've done that, but as I suspected, one of the things that was not done that Brian needs to get with the CPA is we actually have two budgets that we approved. One was our operating budget and one was for lack of a better phrase, the rental budget or the debt repayment budget, where the rents from the properties came in and went out. And it's that second budget that's not really integrated in with the financial statement because he's doing a financial statement that's all together, which is fine. That's how I would do it too if I was doing the statement. But we need to add in that other budget because it makes it look like we have all this extra revenue that we don't really have, and it also makes it look like we spent all this money on interest for the loan and had a zero budget for interest on the loan. So it just needs to be cleaned up. I do like the fact that CPA's added that because it makes it a little bit easier to see. And when you do look at it, if you look at it like I do, don't get confused. What he's doing is running a month in, so the year-to-date month in. So for example, this one was July 31st, there's 7 months in. So he's showing all the actual expenses and income for those 7 months. The budget is not what we approved, that budget number, it's 7 months worth. So, it's a little deceptive because sometimes there's revenue or expenses that all come at the beginning of the year. And so it looks like, oh goodness, we're way off budget. Well, that's just because there's still 4 months left in the year. So if you have any questions about that, I'd be glad to sit down and go through and show you exactly what each line means. Other than that, I don't have anything to report about the financial statements.
Okay, I'll set up a meeting between Brian and Spencer.
Yeah. I mean, you understand what I'm saying with that. And if you need me, I can be in that too.
By the way, thank you for setting that up and thinking about how to show us effective use of our budget. Because without that information,
It's
we don't really know.
just money in and money out.
Right.
How have we done, have we hit our goals or not hit our goals?
Right. Cool, thank you. All right, moving on to old business. We have the parking study update from Tim Haas.
So, Mike Martinville here with Tim Haas, so he's going to kind of walk us through it, just seeing it, and talk through the different parts of it. And keep in mind, you want me to say that this is a working draft.
Thank you. Welcome.
Sure. Yeah, this just was delivered yesterday, Monday, so it is fresh off the presses, so to speak. But we did a parking study downtown and looked at really a couple of things. One, first and foremost, supply and demand, the parking both on street and off street, and looked at the peak hour parking demand actually on several days at various times of the day to get a feel for what is going on downtown. There are definitely pockets of hot areas, pockets where demand is really high, and there are areas where, a lot of vacancy. You guys probably know that. Overall it's okay, but in certain areas, especially down near Marta, it's pretty congested, pretty packed. And a lot of those cars stay there most of the day, long after the 4-hour time restriction. So, taking that into account and knowing that density is coming, and trying to get out ahead of density and parking demand, we made some pretty strong recommendations, general parking management recommendations, to make sure you've got the infrastructure in place to serve the various user groups, the various lane uses that might come into play, depending on where they're coming into the downtown area, starting here maybe north of Squad. So one of the things that, and again, I'm not going to go into particular order, but we're big fans of someone being the champion for parking, whether it's parking department, enterprise fund, or parking authority, whether you do it internally or even externally. So a lot of cities hire an outside firm to manage parking. And it works pretty well because that firm is responsible for enforcement, and really starts with enforcement. And then at some point, we're not saying today, at some point, we're going to look at paid parking. Maybe paid parking and time restricted parking. But none of that really works unless you enforce the parking. You have signs out there now, and people park beyond 4 hours. So we knew that. That's not uncommon. But as more density comes into place, more buildings, more land use, more people, then we got to really start about moving those long-term parkers off-street into off-street parking facilities, because you're on-street right now. Your on-street parking is your most valuable asset. Your curb street, we call it curb parking. So you really want to maximize utilization of that and then have turnover. They like to be around 85% utilization of your on-street parking, which is really good. During those peak hours from, let's say, 10 o'clock until 2 o'clock, and then you've got the evening peak demand as well. So going forward, when we think about a parking management program, it's both on-street and off-street, because it's got to work together, the whole system to work together. When we start thinking of ways to better control employees, better control long-term parkers, it's a super second we think about using a revenue-based parking system, paid parking. We are enormous fans of mobile technology. Nobody does the coins, and that's it. And it's going to be even better 2 or 3 years down the road. So much like the city of Atlanta and many other cities, we're going to park mobile, pay by phone, whatever the system is, and make it really convenient for people to use their phone to pay for parking. We might want to do some kiosks that are strategically located, because some folks will still use their credit card, maybe coins, but by and large, most people are using their phone. And it's really convenient because you can extend your parking if you're somewhere beyond 2 hours. And ordinarily, I'm kind of jumping around a little bit, but this is a really important policy. We really want to make short-term parking areas and identify those, let people know where those are, and people can go there for 2 hours or less. And that's really important. And then those 4-hour parking areas, 8-hour parking areas, which are off-street, are typically for employees and residents who are currently parking on-street. But that's no surprise. So that's really important. As we get towards paid parking, again, we're not suggesting that today because it's this phased step process. Typically what we see happen is there's more time-restricted parking put in place, and it's signage. Someone enforces that. From that enforcement, some revenues can be generated and go into a parking fund or an enterprise fund to start helping build up the infrastructure fund or streetscape, a parking improvement. Because at some point, we think you're going to need a parking deck. And that parking deck can serve multiple uses. One, it's a catalyst for economic development, because most developers can't make parking pencil in their pro forma when they look at the density and how much parking is. So when we're working with private development, the city and the public and private can work together to do something to create that infrastructure to allow them to create the density that's good for downtown. And typically it's a mixed-use project, residential, office, retail, whatever those uses are. But they're going to need that parking. And that parking then becomes off-street parking for employees or long-term parkers. So we think we're going to move in that way, maybe sooner versus later. A lot of cities around the land have been doing that. Woodstock, Swanee, Duluth now. They're looking at putting a parking deck in place to serve as the infrastructure to enable development, enable more density, which can be good or bad, but it does bring more people in and it creates more people, places, and more activity, more restaurants, whatever it may be. So we think you're going down that path, but it's a step-phased process. First, you might have to pay on the street and generate some revenue because you're going to have debt associated with that parking deck. And you can offset that debt somehow. You need a revenue stream to do that. Some cities will use a very aggressive time-restricted enforcement program to generate revenue. That's tough PR-wise. Because most people in this city are acclimated or accustomed to paid parking. It's not that unusual. More and more cities are going to have it. Alpharetta is going to have paid parking pretty soon. We know that Woodstock's going to have paid parking pretty soon. They've been talking about it. Duluth is going to have paid parking. It's a big step because it's sensitive. Because for years, parking was just free on the street. No one did anything about it. No one enforced it. No one said, hey, you can't be there. But with more density, times are changing. So that, from a broad perspective, that's really the biggest policy or program initiative that we want to talk about going forward. Within the report, we got into some detail about using fees in lieu of, which is a good way to bring some revenue back to the city to help pay for parking. It's not uncommon to do. It keeps the private parties, third parties, from having to try to make parking pencil or build a parking deck that they might not be able to afford. So they work in concert with the city. Not uncommon to do, and we kind of like that program. I mentioned, and initially I would recommend you hire a third party to manage parking. To set up a parking department or parking authority takes quite a bit of effort. So if you do that, there are, as you guys know, there are several really strong parking management firms in Atlanta. For example, here is Plaza, that would love to be part of a growing community and help make parking serve the community the way it should serve. From an enforcement perspective, it doesn't matter what size the city is, we really like what's called license plate recognition or LPR for enforcement. You're basically using the license plate of the car as a digital permit, and that's how you enforce parking and time restrictions if that person is parked beyond the time limit. They're doing that right now in the city of Atlanta for the second time. The second time it's working better. A lot of that goes back to the firm that's doing it. But as we go forward and we look at enforcement, that's a really effective tool, an economical way of doing digital chalking, basically. Do some chalk tires, tire food, you can see the new chalk markers. That's going to change again in the next couple of years. Parking industry took a long time to kind of get their act together technology-wise. So now they have got their act together. And so we're seeing all these changes. Seems like every year it roll out. And a lot of it's centered now on mobile technology, which we love. So 2 or 3 years from now, we need something else out there that's state-of-the-art, really user-friendly and convenient to those who use the system. It has to be very intuitive and simple. And there are a lot of folks that are working on those kinds of systems. Some other things that are in here, and this is a draft, and we're looking for comments. We don't have an executive summary pulled together yet because we thought we'd take your comments. Really think about where we're going to go with this study and put together a very strong executive summary that at a glance really tells the story. And then we'll probably have all our recommendations listed on one page as well. As you move forward with off-street parking as a solution, we need to think about wayfinding and how to direct people to that park. And that's signage and graphics. And that's kind of fun. You can do some really neat signage. I think whatever the brand is, however you want to do that. But there are several cities in Georgia, Delani has got some really cool banners that they use that direct people to the public parking. So you don't want people circulating around. You want them to find parking, off-street parking pretty easily. But that sign is kind of you. It's kind of your brand. So whatever that, we didn't define anything here as what that should be, but we think that's a great opportunity to make parking easier and make it more accessible for those to get to off-street parking. Off-street right there. On the curb. So we think that's really important as you start to advance this program that will take a while to put in place and implement. So those are the high marks, I guess, of the study. So we don't necessarily have an overall parking problem today. We've got pockets of pretty high demand. Kind of streets, so it's Arky Street Road down there in Malone. But then there are other streets like Ingersoll Rand, there's nobody out there. So all day long, that's on street parking. are seeing in a lot of cities that are like Woodstock and Duluth, they're bringing in more restaurants. And restaurants are a big driver of parking demand. The density is much greater. You know, it's 10 to 12 per thousand versus 3 to 4 to 5 per thousand. And so as more density like that comes into Chamblee, downtown Chamblee, we expect to see a big change in the peak hour parking. And that's not only during lunch, but also on Friday, Saturday night. And so managing that, making that work. Now we know that ride sharing and autonomous vehicles, which aren't really here yet, but ride sharing is helping that a lot. Uber, Lyft, services like those aren't going away because they're doing great. So we think that helps offset what used to be a high demand in restaurants. But it's a good problem, because that means you got to have to place, and restaurants are great driver destinations. So that land use mix and how that works and how parking works with that land use mix is something that we need to look about and think about 30,000 feet. A lot of developments that we get involved in, parking is actually, you know, it's not very fun, but parking is a big driver of how dense the development can be. It's parking. It's crazy. So, what I'd love to suggest is that we review this and really go through it, make comments, and then we'll take all those comments, put together a final report, executive summary back, and then I can back and present it wherever present.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. So since you guys are just seeing this, there's a whole bunch of recommendations that are listed in there. So I'll give you guys maybe 2 weeks. You send me any input, comments, and I'll send it over to Casey. And hopefully the goal is having a final report in September.
Yeah. The gentleman that did this study, he used to run parking systems for Portland, Oregon, and another city. I can't remember what it is. He's been in the parking business for a long, long time. Municipal parking business. And it's business. So, primarily his recommendations.
So is this typically done through a city or through their DDA or both? I know in Athens, I believe Athens DDA runs their parking, but the city of Atlanta obviously doesn't do it. It doesn't do their.
No, that's a good question, because
And
sometimes.
frankly, the third party that the city of Atlanta uses, you know,
Yes.
we need to stay away from that because that is harmful.
Yes, yes. It does.
So it can be done through the DDA.
Yeah, we've seen it done through Public Works, we've seen it done through DDA, but we see it typically as a separate department. Because the one group that you really, I don't want to offend anybody here, but the one group that you really don't want to have to enforce parking is the police. They don't like it. It's just not what they have to do.
Well, and then the citizens start complaining that the police are just.
Yeah, a different channel.
Yeah.
So, and that's why, and I know we talked very briefly about this, and I'm not recommending this, but it might be a good idea, because there are several cities that have gone down this path of parking authority. It could be a parking and transportation authority, because now it's, and it could be a mobility authority, because that whole terminology, vernacular has changed. We have all these different options now. So, as you all go forward, that might be an avenue to go down, because then that group has certain things that they can do with the money that they stand to. So,
The one problem that I see here, and this is something that the council has discussed, city council and I, the councilman, has discussed for quite a long time. Pretty much we've touched on everything that we've been talking about. But one of the problems that I see is an immediate problem and a long-term problem. And the immediate problem is the one that has been very hard for us to address. You know, we're getting ready to take some parking away from some people with our Peachtree Road redo. And, you know, we've got old landowners that don't want paved behind the old historic buildings, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we do not have a fund right now with the money to build a parking deck. All of those things, much less put in, the system that would be required for paid parking, especially in the electronic time. So, how do we get there?
Wow, that's a great. We are enormous fans of shared parking. We're enormous fans of mixed-use developments. We're enormous fans of cities working with third parties to help get there. Because in my mind, I think going forward, you're going to get there by working with a third party. There's one, they're pretty good with their parking tax, but there's also shared use opportunity for them. So, and this is exactly what Swanee did. They worked with a third party who was doing what we call town center development. And they worked together and basically said, we need 100 parking spaces out here, 600 parking. They refused the rest of the residential law. And the developer, the third party, was able to deliver the parking for a very economical price per space, which the city could never do. And it was just a great idea. So going forward, I think talking with someone like them, Marty, well, I can't think of his last name, but they just went through this exact same thing. They're cutting off how we do it. They're off parking's free, it's still free today. But what can we do to get that infrastructure? And now they've got the infrastructure, the project's done, that they can help others do development. So that would be my recommendation. That's one way to lead there. It's very difficult. I've seen cities all over the country try to do this. Parking, to make parking pencil, you need to generate about $150 per space per month to cover the debt service and the operating expenses. That's a lot. Especially when the city of Atlanta's monthly rates are $80, $70. Maybe daily parking might generate, which it does, daily or transient parking generates more turns, so it generates more revenue. That's a lot of money to generate to pay the debt service and the operating expenses. So that's why you see a lot of people developing parking decks. It just doesn't pencil. It's very difficult to pencil. But working with a private party and doing something shared, that's a little ballgame. Or a different opportunity. So that's my recommendation.
And there's some really short-term recommendations, like, especially with a lot of the pain points we have with restaurants at night around Pierce and Peachtree, and so one of the recommendations you guys have there is valet parking. So whether that's something that the city helps with, or maybe it's just something that the restaurants partner with and go in on, hiring a third-party valet company, identify where they can use parking at night.
Yeah, well, trackside keeps coming to mind. The other issue is people like the people that pay rent on the office space at 5356, the Parkside Partners, feel that they own those spaces that are on the street. And I know that they don't, and they know that they don't, but they give their landlord a hard time that they can't find a parking space on the street, so that all they have to do is walk that short sidewalk into the front door. That's just a popularity problem.
Yeah, because it's not their park.
It's not
It's
theirs.
here, it's public infrastructure, that's public park.
We paid for that. We paid for that at Parkside. We, the city paid to have that put in. I didn't. It didn't happen at the same time.
The on-street stuff.
Yes, it did, so I wasn't sure it was us doing it or that.
The on-street parking.
The street was built.
It was built at the same time. I think that's why the
A little bit
tenants,
after.
but I think that's why the tenants think it's theirs, because it was built along with the building.
It was built a little bit after, however, and it was that newer, I don't think Malone has it yet. They've got on-street parking, they don't have the bump outs. But that was built by the city after Parkside and because of the complaints.
Well, and that's
Still
not,
get over it. When we put up meters, still get over it.
that's,
Yes.
that's right. I mean, that's one of the problems in the growing fourth ward. There's a lot of new development going on, and people are fixing homes down there, but they put in more on-street parking. Doesn't mean it's that homeowners
Right.
parking. It's still
Right.
part of the public infrastructure,
Sure.
but they feel like, well, that's mine. Not really. It's what we did to provide, to help you,
Mhm.
because there's no privacy.
And I mean, I understand, I mean, well, we've got MARTA, and so because of the proximity to MARTA, there's a certain number of feet where you don't have to, you can forego some of your parking spaces for your businesses. But then what happens is that those businesses go, well, we didn't put any extra parking in, how come we don't have any parking? It's the city's fault. So that's, you know, it's the grousing and I get it. I mean, there's just going to be that grousing no matter what. But it's also, and I think that this is something that we just have to grin and bear it as legislators, if you want to call us that. And that is, we're trying to get people out of their cars, period. And the only way to make that happen is to make it harder for them to use their car. And in the meantime, we got to put up with it.
Robert, a couple months ago, you had mentioned concerns about the data that's driven from park. Is that you?
Yeah, there's technology.
Yes, okay. Will you take a look through this when you get a chance and see if this is addressing your concerns? I know we're going to take 2 weeks and then give you some comments back, but I want to make sure we drop that.
collected.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this stuff is based on, time of day, time, setting things up so that you're optimizing your parking. Like, just talking out loud, I'd say, it'd be nice if we had kind of like a top 3. Who are the top 3 operators? What's the stuff that they use? Who else in Atlanta uses the same type of technology? If we're talking about mobile apps, are we going off on our own and doing our own thing? And then when somebody visits Chamblee, they then have to download a different app.
Yeah, and we would recommend it. We would recommend Park Mobile, which is what's all over the city of Atlanta, because it's already here.
Perfect. That's
But to your point, though, and we're having more of this conversation, the parking industry's caught up. We're now using this term smart parking. Smart cities, smart parking, and that's using data to basically control and manage parking. And again, you're not here yet, but let's just play whatever. If there are certain areas that are really hopping, really a lot of demand, that it costs more to park there.
exactly.
And over here, it's a little less, maybe over here. It's really affordable because you want to push people over there.
Right.
And you can only do that if you collect the data.
Right.
And then you use the data to basically manage parking. So the good news is, this took a while to get there. We have systems now that are in place that have been designed to allow us to do that more affordably. And some of those parking firms that I mentioned earlier, Lumiers and SP Pluses and people like that, they got those systems. I mean, that's what when they go to cities to try to win their on-street parking, that's what they sell, promote. Hey, this data we can collect, we can do dynamic pricing, we do this with enforcement or whatever, make your overall parking system work better.
So if that's not already in the
No.
draft, is that something we can get added in?
Yes, yes, and we touched on that very briefly, but yes, absolutely. But to your point, I would highly recommend using the Park Mobile, because most folks have that already on their phone. Because you got to put your license plate in and all that stuff. And once you do it, it's there.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we'll read through it and get some comments to Catherine and get them over to you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, next item on the agenda is a town center update. Would you like to give us a little preview now?
Well, I think, we have a couple of things to discuss with you all in executive session because they concern real estate. But I think we have enjoyed.
Hey, Bob, I'm sorry, could I get you stand there?
I like it.
I don't think people want to see your accent.
I was going to make a comment, but I realized I shouldn't.
Since you all accepted the plan, we have been continuing to work on a couple of things. Don Brooks is going to be talking about some of the parcels that we're bringing under to the authority for purchase or for ground lease. But what we did is that we, just for the benefit of the other folks on the DDA, is that we have begun meeting on a regular basis with Catherine. Andrew's been doing that, but this afternoon we sat down and kind of walked through the 4 or 5 major points of things that we recommended that the city or the DDA do, and they kind of got fully coordinated on that. And those things specifically were the sub-area zoning district, creating that for village commercial. And that process is underway by the city council. We also talked about the priority list for the city's development projects, those being the city hall, the police precinct station, moving that civic center, and possibly parking. That's why the discussion here with Tim tonight was very appropriate. We went through all of that. We discussed the infrastructure development plan, kind of the steps for that, consultants, hiring the consultants. And then last, this looking at your targeted incentives as it may relate to people who are coming in, and the city managing its cash through all of that. And so John Walker's in that. So we're watching, for me to report on this, really like the sausage being made right now. Because the hard thing about this is that people get excited about the vision and then they say, okay, well, why hasn't that happened, right? And so, our goal in working with Catherine and you all is to have a developer day, kind of a spotlight on Shanley here, the month in late October, where we're going to be able to showcase all the stuff that's underway for the city and the good work that you folks have been doing. So that's kind of a quick update. I don't have anything other specific.
That's perfect. When is Taste of Shanley? It's October 6th. Are we going to set up a booth to kind of show the dog and pony that we sort of had?
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, we're talking about that. We're going to do that. The development department will have something for the transportation plan, set up showing the town there.
Great. Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right. Next item on the agenda is Shanley Dunwoody Collision Center. All right. So at this point, Shanley Dunwoody Collision is a property we brought back in 2016. It's actually 2 pieces of property. They are 4 or 5 months in arrears now. Catherine's been reaching out to them with no response. This is the first time that we've dealt with this. We always knew it was a possibility and it's going to come up eventually. It looks like this is it. We're going to have to hire a lawyer to start dispossessory proceedings on them. My recommendation is that we hire Mike Dunham at Dunham Law. He is not a local attorney, which is a good thing for unpleasant matters like this. He's somebody that I've been working with for 10 years. He's somebody I've co-counseled with, and I intend to work with him on this. So I'll have a lot of visibility into it, which will allow us to keep our costs down. I have his retainer agreement. He's asking for a $5,000 retainer. What we'll do is we'll do the dispossessory. We will accelerate the rents due into the lease. We'll have to file suit for the back rents owed. And looking at the lease, I'm not entirely sure that our lease is with an entity. It looks like our lease is actually with an individual, which would be an added level of complexity to start collection. The hope is going to be that once we start this proceeding, that he actually comes back and says, hey, let's work something out. I think it's in all of our interest to keep the tenant there if we can, but we can't keep the tenant there if we're basically funding his business. And that's where we are now.
It'll be an added level of simplicity. It's personal guarantee.
Depending on what he has. The last I checked, there were still cars and property and stuff on the property. So we're going to want to try to get a distress warrant on that sort of stuff as soon as possible too, in order to make ourselves whole. So the motion is to engage a law firm and to allocate a $5,000 retainer to get started on that.
Would they, if we win this case, I guess it's a case, or not win it, would they be responsible for attorney's fees?
Potentially.
Okay.
So I have, my professional experience, I've been doing dispossessory matters, defending and prosecuting for 20 some odd years now. And this is something I would offer to do myself if I wasn't the chairman. So I can't sit in both chairs. It is difficult sometimes to get judges to award attorney's fees. So when people ask exactly that question, I always tell them, you always ask for it, there's no guarantee you're going to get it. And depending on the judge and the day of the week and the time of the month and the time of the year, there are a lot of things that go into that. Even getting a judgment for back rents and arrears doesn't mean you actually get the money. A judge hands you a piece of paper, you then have to liquidate that piece of paper. So it's a multi-step process. The easiest part of it is getting them removed from the property. But I will tell you from personal experience that I've been able to keep tenants in the property without paying rent for fairly lengthy periods of time. So
The
this
law
is
state lieutenant, not land.
correct. Even in Georgia. So what I don't want to do is waste any more time waiting. If he's not responsive, we've given him his opportunity. He's received letters and phone calls. We can track those letters. We know we've got them. It's time to move forward.
Motion to have our chairman engage with the state law firm with, you said $5,000?
$5,000 retainer.
Retainer up to $5,000.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. I'll make sure.
Before we move on, I have a follow-on question that Catherine had emailed about if we do end up having to dispossess them and get them off the property. The question was about what we could put as a new tenant in there and whether or not we have a non-conforming use zoning problem. And can you explain what you put in that email about?
So, the use is grandfathered in for a year. So that year starts as soon as he leaves the current tenant. And it would have to be the same kind of business, the same use. So for you were asking clarification.
My question was, he's just parking cars there, right? Was he doing something other than parking cars
I
there?
think he's doing,
That was a
or he has his office.
Yes, okay, I wasn't sure if there was actual work being done or if it was just
No,
parking cars there.
I think in talking to the planning department and the development department, because cars are parked there, and if you lease it out for parking, that's probably still considered the same.
That is.
Type of use, but there can't be any expansion of use, there can't be any change to the building, or anything like that. So
Well, the
I think
reason-
we do have a little bit of wiggle room as far as if someone wanted to lease it out, just park cars there.
Well, and that was why I wanted to know that, was because since we know this is a property that's going to be integral to the town center, we don't want to all of a sudden end up in a situation where we're leasing it to someone who's expecting to be there for 20 years.
Short term.
And I feel pretty confident that with all the car dealers, you could probably find one of them that says, yeah, we'd love to park for the next year, our cars on that property. Then we're collecting rent and not sitting on a vacant property for 2 years.
Since we know we can do it, is that something that we should go ahead and engage with one of the dealers about releasing a lot?
Or do you want to wait until you get further along?
We're gonna take the property.
Yeah.
So.
I think it's not too soon to get a broker involved or start looking, however we look around for that and see who's interested. But, you know, we can't guarantee them a start date.
I don't think it would take that much work to find the
I don't
Yeah.
even know that you
I mean,
need to
and this
pay,
is not
I don't even know
built
that
out.
you need to pay someone to go find them.
There's
Yeah.
a big,
I think Catherine can make 2 phone calls and have someone
Yeah.
at the end of the day.
Yeah.
all right.
So it would be good since we have a loss period, we can go and maybe or maybe not utilize, to get that teed up. And I think there's going to be a demand, if the use is permitted, then let's just get that ready to go. So as soon as we get it printed out, we can put someone in.
It's actually the next item on our agenda is somebody who wants to use the women's center for parking.
Yeah,
So
temporarily.
we can, and that's a temporary thing, but going to your point about demand, it's clearly out there. With that segue,
Yeah, so I just wanted the rest of the board to know, and Dave know about this, the CarMax is doing some construction right off of Peachtree Boulevard, and they've gotten some complaints about the construction crews parking on the street, so they were looking
All right, and with that, we've reached the end of our agenda. It's time for public comment. If you're a member of the public, please stand up, tell us your name. Thank you all for being here. We'd like to hear any thoughts, opinions, anything like that.
Chris Lee, represent Deca. Question about the parking infrastructure that he's looking into. How big of a structure are we looking at, and how many spaces? What do you think would accommodate?
I would, without trying to not answer your question, I would have to tell you, I don't think we know that yet. Part of the conversation is that the city's got to tell us what their needs are. We have to build that into what a private developer is going to want. It's part of what the parking study eventually will show. So I don't have an answer for you, but we will soon, hopefully. Thank you, that's a great question. You, sir.
And if you want to take a look at this schematic, that might give you some ideas to what has been progressed.
Mr. Chairman, I mean, there is a link on the city's, the DDA's website, I guess, right, that has our, kind of the plan that Leslie's talking about, that shows, there's a couple of pages that talk specifically about planning for parking, that I think would be very helpful.
Hi, I'm Ed Tiorn. My wife owns Breathe Yoga right down here at Miller and Peach Street. And I appreciate that you mentioned there's the long-term parking issue and the immediate parking issue. And we are more interested in the immediate parking issue. Because twice in the last 3 weeks, we've had people that have told us they came to classes, and it's daytime classes. They come to class, there's no place to park, and they leave. And I would like to see either somebody enforcing the old-fashioned way with chalk on tires. I do know that some of the issue is the 5,300 residents, but that's an issue the building will have to take care of. But the offices that are around here, that are, like you said, they think it's their parking lots. Something needs to be done. And I understand. I don't like a parking ticket either. But one parking ticket, I'm going to think about where I'm going to park the next day. So the immediate issue is, and I also know some of the other businesses. Hello Gorgeous, she has a lot of problems with people parking. I'd just like somebody to do something about that quickly. Thanks.
All right, with that, do we have a motion to enter executive session for the purpose of discussing a real estate transaction?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great, we're going to go to executive session.
You all like this format, okay? Or no, it's fine.
We're out of executive session. We're out of executive session. We should have two motions from executive session.
Motion to approve the $20,000 into escrow for the post office. Second.
Motion to empower me to sign it once Dan signs off on it.
Our David to sign it once Dan approves it.
Yes.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. The second motion.
Motion to accept the changes to the Pierce property.
To empower Don to carry through on those suggested
Carry
changes.
down, carry through on those suggested changes. Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All right, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're out. Thank you guys. Thank you, everybody.